Hello, everyone. My favorite people on the other end, whether you're on YouTube, you're on Spotify, you're on iTunes, super appreciate you. Those of you on the YouTube, you know the next steps. Hit that subscribe button and also notification bell so you can be informed of these absolute bombs and golden nuggets that are dropped. Having one of those interesting days where I had to keep pushing along. Actually, when hopping onto this, shooting this content, because I like to shoot multiple pieces of content in one day just to really crank everything out, is I was feeling a little, what should I do it? Should I wait till tomorrow? But that's always an indication that you should do, that I should do it anyway, and I'm just doing a personal experience here. So always appreciate you all, and this is one of my ultimate goals and focus is really just to help out individuals, and that's one fuel to get me, that is what I leverage as fuel as a way to get me through those ups and downs. So just wanted to be transparent with you guys, and those of you who are on iTunes and other platforms outside of YouTube, if you could leave that rating, it would really mean the world to me. So welcome as always to the Real Estate Experience with your host, which is myself, Sterling White. And if there's any topics that you would like for me to cover that I haven't already, go ahead and comment below. And those of you who are new to the channel and any questions that you have, go ahead and drop those in the comments section as well. Here to, in essence, point you in the right direction with where you're looking to go. And one thing I do want to mention too is there is a multifamily guide on everything that you need to know to get started. So definitely you'll want to visit sterlingwhiteofficial.com to get that. One more time, that is sterlingwhiteofficial.com to be able to get that. So today's question that I get quite often, that I got from a fellow investor mentee, is how do you receive, when you submit an offer to an owner, how are you able to get a counter offer? So I just want to provide my personal experience here. And those of you, if you're just now coming across this channel, name is Sterling White. Born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, not so good parts of the city, where when you tend to drive through, you would roll your windows up and then also lock your doors. Single mother, fraternal twin, and grew up in Section 8 housing, welfare, and I'm sure of other government assistance. But luckily, my mother ended up moving us out of that troubled environment out to more of the suburbs. We were still in lower income housing, but completely different of the circle and people we had surrounding us. So got started in real estate 2009 on the construction side. Shortly after that, shifted to investing. Bought my very first single family house, 23 years old, no money out of pocket. I was actually so broke at that time. I actually had negative funds in my bank account because I was just not being financially smart and would always over withdraw it. And then, of course, pay the bank back. And then scaled up to 150 single families, and then in 2017 made the entire shift to multifamily, with my very first deal being a 46 unit. So it's all, I share my trials and tribulations, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in hopes that you can avoid the potholes and mistakes that I've made and replicate the successes. So let's jump into it. And those of you on here, go ahead and comment below with where you're from. So going back to the question is, why, when this individual, when they submitted an offer, did they not receive a counter? So it comes down to, and this is just my personal experience here, that the person on the other end is not motivated enough, and they do not actually have a problem to be solved. So this is why on the first initial conversations that I'm having with an owner, and you can really see the different ends of the spectrum. I'm actually working on a deal right now that's over 160 units, of which the owner is following up with me and saying, hey, what additional information do you need to for us to move this to the closing table, versus someone who's on the other end of the spectrum that says, yes, I'd only sell for the right price, top dollar, anything that is above market. So you'll see the differences between one person is not interested, no desire whatsoever, and you have to do majority of the work to push it, or trying to get them to actually convert from being just an owner to a seller, versus someone on the other end of the spectrum is a seller. They're ready to go right now, and they have a motivation, whether they've just relocated and they're trying to manage the property from afar. That's one key trigger to listen for. Another is if the property is at a low occupancy and has been that way for a while, and potentially the owner has ran out of cash to be able to get through the remaining of the renovation. So those are just some common things. And one principle that I mentioned to many people is using the 80-20. So in essence is I like to focus 80% of my efforts on the 20% of people where there's a problem that can actually be solved and there's a desire to sell. Because if I reach out to an owner and they say, well, I'm making a good return on this and I would not want to sell because I know I wouldn't, in today's environment, be able to go out there and find another property that will give me as much of a good return as I'm getting on this. So that's what some investors is looking, putting yourself in the other individual shoes. And just understanding what their goals and objectives are and if you can solve those. So in essence, if you submit an offer on someone who's not motivated to sell, let's say they're looking to sell the property at, let's say I'm throwing out a figure of $20 million, and you know that in order for it to work on your numbers, and let's say the fair market value is actually at $15 million, and they're only selling at $20 million because they want an offer that would just be way over market in order for them to actually consider selling. And then in that case is that they're just not motivated to sell. That's one thing I just want to mention to everyone on here. And what I was going to mention is there's not going to be a counter because this is where I'm at, and there's really no desire to absolutely sell. So why would I look to counter your offer when I want to get top dollar? So many of the times if someone is motivated and they actually want to work with you in terms of selling, and one approach that you can take is a way to assist with having that person's expectations come a little bit down. And this is in a scenario where they actually have a desire to sell, is you can get comparable properties and say that, hey, I understand that you're at $20 million. However, the fair market value, and this is surrounding properties that have sold in this type of condition, the style, the age, the class of property are selling for around about 15, 16 million. So that is why I came in where I came at. And the thing is that's what you can leverage to provide to someone to have them come down. However, if they have no desire to sell, then those comps, they'll say, okay, well, I see those comps there, but I'm still not in the market to sell. And I'll give you all a prime example myself on the other side, where a broker came to me of a property that I have in Louisville, for instance, 80 units, in which they mentioned that I have an offer that of a buyer that is actually purchasing several properties around yours. And I said, well, we're really not in the market to sell. And they said, okay, I completely understand. And if you were to sell, what would you consider? I said, well, we're really just not in the market, and it would have to be way over market. So you guys get where I'm going, because there's really no desire to sell. So I'm just showing you guys the flip side of things. And I said, well, I mean, we would consider selling if they were to pay well over market. And then that's when they started to push the ball a little bit more and say, hey, would you be willing to provide your financials, your T12, which is your past 12, your trailing 12 months of profit and loss in terms of financials, and then also your rent roll. And I just simply followed up and said that, hey, as mentioned, we're really not sellers at this point in time. If the buyer wants to provide an offer, and that goes to show you just because on their side, of course, it makes sense for them to have financials, but we really just don't have a desire to really do this work, get the financials, the rent roll, and go back and forth for them just to, in essence, that for them to be able to submit an offer that really is just not going to be where we want it to be at the end of the day. There we go, a little bit of a tongue twister, but I just wanted to show you both sides of the table. is if someone doesn't have a desire to sell, then I've always just moved on and just focused on those people, those individuals, those operators that are raising their hand. Because if they're not raising their hand and they have no desire whatsoever, and maybe they want to hold on to the property for the long term and then pass it on to their heirs, then that's an indication that, yeah, they would accept the offer, but it had to just knock their socks off, which majority of the time, those type of purchase prices just doesn't make sense on the numbers. So this comes down to having a abundance mindset versus a scarcity, which it all stems down to that, just personal experience share. If someone is that high on a price and they have no desire to sell, I'm not really able to provide a solution in terms of purchasing the asset from them. Is that just moving on to the next one and not being in a scarcity mindset, saying that I have to make this work. I'm going to keep following up with this, even though there's no desire to sell. You can still, of course, convince or in essence, catch them at the right time to where maybe some circumstance happens to where they do need the cash. But this comes down to the 80-20 principle, which is focusing. You can take those efforts and focus on the 20% of people who need to sell right now or within the next couple months versus someone who plans on holding on to it for a lifetime until they pass and then giving it to their heirs. So that's just one thing. I just want to provide an experience share for you all of a question I got. It's just not when they submit an offer, why are they not receiving a counter? It just comes down to the other individuals, the person that you're looking to purchase their property from, what's their desire, and if you're able to solve that problem that they have. And if there is no problem, then if you, let's say the property's fair market at $50 million and above market is $20 million, that they won't counter because they want something that's just absolutely above market in order for them to actually consider on selling. So there's that. And then a way that you can negotiate too, if it came down to it, let's say they do have somewhat of a desire to sell, is you can get comps and say, hey, I know you're at the $20 million figure. However, surrounding properties in this condition, this class of property, age, are selling for $15 million or they're selling for this. This is how I came up to that property, meaning that based upon the net operating income, properties are trading and selling at a 7 cap. So that's what I want to share with you all in terms of that question. I get quite a bit. Now let's go ahead and shift into a quote that I really like here. Sometimes I'll switch between having a quote. Another time I'll switch into actually having a book recommendation. I'm not affiliated with any of these books. I am a avid book reader. I'm actually reading a book by Elon Musk. He's not the one that wrote it. Someone interviewed him. It's an okay book. It's decent right now. I'm trying to get through it, but I most likely won't finish it all the way through because it's not really engaging to me. But that stays between us, you guys. Also, comment below what's a good book that you have read recently. I'm always on the lookout for books. So, all right, the quote that we have here is, "Do today's duty, fight tomorrow's temptation. Do not weaken and distract yourself by looking forward to things you cannot see and could not understand if you saw them. Do today what should be done. Your tomorrow may never come. Today is the pupil of yesterday." Love that. Love that quote. And my biggest takeaway from that is just being in the present moment and doing what you can do as much as you can today. And one of the 4 agreements, which is through another book that I love, is always do your best. So do as best as you can today. Prime example, what I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast is I was just having one of those days. I'm just feeling a little off. And I was like, well, I can go ahead and just shoot a couple more podcast episodes tomorrow. But as soon as I get that, I've trained myself so many times when I get that feeling, Sterling, you got to do it anyway. Because what I've learned is the unsuccessful people, when they don't feel like doing something, you know what they do? They don't do it. And the successful people, when they don't want to do something, they do it anyway because it comes down to discipline. And I was listening to a individual on a sales, Jared Glant, who works with Grant Cardone, for instance. I like listening to their podcast that they have, which is Young Hustlers. And he said one of the things he's meeting these people that have these larger companies that are even further ahead, and I wouldn't say looked up to, but they're producing at $10 million in terms of revenue, 15, 50, 100 million. And he's speaking with them. He's like, well, I'm not really that impressed with those individuals. It was nothing against them, of course. He's just saying that these are common average people. Of course, they've done extraordinary things, but the main premise out of that is what he said was they're just very disciplined, meaning they know what they have to do and they actually do it. Versus other people, the unsuccessful and many of the businesses that don't thrive or operators, is they know what they have to do, but they'll take some days off, they'll slouch. So that's just what I want to share with you guys. I'm always just an entrepreneur investor sharing what I am learning as I evolve and keep constantly want to be the strongest version of myself each and every day. So appreciate y'all. Appreciate you all so much. And as mentioned, those of you on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and then also visit to get that guide on everything you need to know about multifamily investing, sterlingwhiteofficial.com. One more time, that is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. I'm here to be of value to you, and if there's anything that you want me to go more in depth into, here to ultimately point you in the right direction, because there's that quote I love by Tony Robbins that says the secret to living is giving. And when I have days such as this where I'm just feeling a little bit down, I just figure out a way to go give to someone, because in essence is the secret to living is giving, and that's when I even start to feel more fulfilled. So you all, thank you so much and keep being awesome. Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.